All the praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator and sustainer, the creator of all things. The supreme being, the supreme king, who sets the rules and who gave us the deen of al-Islam as guidance for humanity out of the darkness to the light. And he sent prophets throughout history, beginning with Adam alayhi salam and ending with Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. And the prophets, they came to address the challenges and the problems that humanity have faced. And because the message of the Quran that Allah revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the final message, the final revelation. Allah mentioned in it the messages of past prophets, past messengers, and what kind of problems they faced and they addressed. Some of them addressed political problems, like we discussed last week with Musa and Harun standing up to Fir'aun and his tyranny. And some were sent for dealing with economic problems, like the Prophet Shu'aib to the city of Midian. Some of them were sent for other social issues or religious issues. Today we continue our series on the creative chaos that the shaitan has brought into our world through his many willing and ready workers who, in their opinion and limited knowledge, they believe that's what's good. But for any casual observer, for all of us, we can see the level of chaos in the world today. The unrest, the misery, the poverty, the illness. So one of their targets was the religious chaos, taking people off the belief in one God. That was fundamental, the foundation of their attack, in order to allow themselves to appoint themselves as lawgivers instead of Allah, that they can legislate and tell us what to do. Prior to that, there was always a religious basis for government. There were always either Jewish, Christian, or Muslim bases for who is ruling and where they get their policies from. So the Roman Empire, for over 1,000 years, they based their governance on Christianity. In fact, most European and American laws come down from that vein. The prophets of Bani Israel that Allah mentioned in the Quran, they were all ruling with the Torah. إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا التَّوْرَاةَ فِيهَا هُدًى وَنُورٌ يحكم بها النبيون الذين أسلموا للذين هادوا والربانيون والأحبار بما استحفظوا من كتاب الله وكانوا عليه شهداء. That they were ruling the prophets of Bani Israel, they were ruling Bani Israel with the Torah that Allah revealed with the message of Islam. And they were governing their subordinates of the scholars and the rabbis and the monks, all the people based on the principles of the Torah. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, he brought a message of Islam that was the basis for the various Muslim states or empires for 1400 years. But then when the French Revolution came and revolted against the church and against the authority, against the rules, and came with the idea that we, the humans, it's human-centric, that we come up with the rules. We make our own rules as we like. And since then, that has been the push to create this chaos that led to political chaos that we call the republics, creation of states, city-states, ethnic states. There are republics where the people set the laws and the rules and discard the laws of God and decide by 50+1 majorities, regardless if that law is beneficial to the people or not, regardless if it is in agreement with God's laws or not. So the rich and the powerful and the billionaires and the corporations start taking over these republics, manipulating the laws and the system to serve their interests. And what we see today, and what we have seen in the last 50 years, that armies march to war to serve the interest of the big corporations, to secure the oil, to open markets. And this is still going on, because that's their next move, is economic control. But economic control, they don't want it to be a fair control. They want to be based on chaos also. When we look at the world that we live in today, from east to west, we see the number of human beings who are poor is higher than ever before. If you look at the economic situation in Afghanistan, it's completely destroyed. They don't have enough food. They need international aid and help. So what did 20 years of occupation made for a country of 40 million people? When we look at Iraq today, which was 50 years ago a prosperous nation, self-sufficient, exporting food to neighbors, they don't have electricity. They don't have clean water, even though they have two rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, Al-Furat wa Dijla. They're not able to be self-sufficient, even though they are very rich oil country. If you look at Syria, economically destroyed. A person's salary for a whole month does not buy him a pound of meat. Is not enough to pay for filling up his car in gas. If it was there, there is no gasoline, there is no electricity, there is no medicine. If you look at the economy of their neighbor, Lebanon, 74% are under poverty now. 55% of young people can't find jobs. If you find a job, that job can buy you a few sandwiches. Your salary for the whole month does not fill up your tank of gas. If you look at Libya, a rich oil country, 6-7 million people, but that oil is not going to help the people. they're in need. You look at Tunisia, you look at Morocco, you look at Egypt, you look at Ethiopia, you look at Yemen. Where do you want to look? It's the same story. That wherever the Western powers have put their hands in, they destroyed these economies. The people 100 years ago used to live better, used to have enough food from what they produced from the lands they took care of, from the animals they owned. Now they should be much better with all the technologies that are available. But instead, 1 billion Muslims today are under the poverty line. That's not accidental. That's not normal. That's intentional. That's the chaos they wanted, the result that the masses in the Muslim world should be only worried about what to feed their children. How can they feed their children? That way you don't think about politics. That way you don't think about progress. That way you don't worry about the housing. Your only worry is what to eat today. When your children are crying for food, they're hungry. While in this nation we throw food away. When we throw big amounts of food in the ocean and not export it to help people. They don't have medicines. When in this nation, people even refusing to take the vaccine. Those poor nations, they may have 5-6% of the population vaccinated. And they want to give booster shot when other nations don't have a single shot yet. Because economic devastation will follow a medical crisis like the pandemic. So all of this is intentional. Allah sent Prophet Shu'aib. His message is all about first Tawheed, then to address the economic corruption and chaos that they were practicing in Midian. Midian was a city on the eastern sea coast of the Red Sea, near where right now they're planning to build a new city, Neom. Allah destroyed them with an earthquake. Midian practiced economic corruption. So Allah sent to them Shu'aib. وَإِلَى مَدْيَنَ أَخَاهُمْ شُعَيْبًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مَا لَكُم مِّنْ إِلَٰهٍ غَيْرُهُ. Number one, worship Allah. You have no other God, no other Lord but Him. That's where you get your laws from. To address first that theological authority, like I said, they first destroyed that. Midian, when they were able to say, we don't believe in God, there is no authority, God doesn't have authority over us to tell us what to do, they told him, to Shu'aib, أَصَلَوَاتُكَ تَأْمُرُكَ أَن نَتْرُكَ مَا يعبد آباؤنا أو أن نفعل في أموالنا ما نشاء إنك لأنت الحليم الرشيد. Said, your prayers to this God tells you that we have to abandon the gods we worship, the many gods, the idols that we made, the gods that we customized, or to do what we want with our money. You're telling us there's halal and haram. Leave us alone. So he said, قَدْ جَاءَتْكُمْ بَيِّنَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. A clear evidence and signs came to you from your Lord. فَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ وَالْمِيزَانَ وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Said first, أَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ. When you measure for the people, you sell them, you give them a product, give them what they're paying for. Don't shortchange them. Don't play with the measurements. Don't play with the scales. الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان. It starts when that corruption, when a merchant starts shortchanging or charging his customer. But that's what you see across the Muslim world today. What you pay for is not what you get. You have to pay bribes to get what you need, to get your basic food or medicine. It's not priced competitively or based on cost. It's priced based on what they can get out of you. They may have gasoline, but they're not going to sell it to you. They may have medicines, but they'll hoard it. They'll have food, but they will hoard it so prices can go up so they can get more money for it. All of these practices are haram. They're forbidden. وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُم. Don't take people's properties. You have governments, princes, kings who go and confiscate lands and properties and houses and cars and monies and trades and businesses and overtax them. So they become richer and richer for themselves, where their people become poorer and poorer. Ali Abdullah Saleh had $70 billion when his people were starving. Gaddafi, similarly, when he died, the known money is over $100 billion that he stashed away, that was taken away by European banks, while his people didn't have enough to eat. This fasad, Shu'aib said, وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا. Do not bring chaos and corruption in the land after Allah has made it plentiful and good for everyone. It's sufficient. People say today we have problem because we have overpopulation. No, it's not because of overpopulation. It's because of very bad economic policies that came from leaving the religion and God and having political oppression and tyranny that led third to economic oppression and tyranny. But that's how the financial centers control now the world. So after World War II, we see the creation of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund with the purpose of financial control. Any country, any nation, any individual that doesn't obey and follow their rules and policies, they will go to war with them. They will go and give loans to countries that have been devastated by wars and natural disasters, and those loans have high interest and conditions. If you want this money, you have to do this and this and this and that in your social life, in your religious life, in your schools, in your cities. Allow homosexuality, allow corruption in other fields to come into your country. You have to give up your values and your religion if you want money to eat. And they make sure that those countries can never ever pay back those loans. So that financial control, every financial transaction you could imagine, travels from anywhere. If you are giving money to your brother in Cairo or Karachi, it goes to New York City and then comes back. It has to go through their computers. They have to track you. They have to know who gave money to who. And some people today think, oh, we're getting freedom with cryptocurrencies, with Bitcoin. We're going to be able to do transactions and nobody knows. Fools. Because that's exactly what they want to do. Give you an alternative way so that they can track you even better. They created new currency. For millennia, humans had value in their hands. You carry gold in your hand that has intrinsic value. Allah put the value in that metal to use it for transactions. He mentioned it in the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ. The gold and silver were meant as representation of intrinsic value. There is a limited quantity in the world, and this is the value of it. And this prevents inflation. Money will always have the same value. No. We have to convert it to paper currency, where 30 years ago, a Lebanese pound would be equal to $1. Now, it's 20,000 pounds equal to $1. Because the money has no value, intrinsic value in itself. It's a piece of paper. But whose money makes value? The US dollar. So when President Nixon in the 70s changed and moved away from the dollar standard, from the gold standard, and started printing money, after he secured that any transaction for world trade, like oil, every barrel of oil has to be transacted in dollars. He made a condition to the Saudis and the people in the Gulf who had the oil. If you want to stay in government, you have to use the dollar. You cannot use any other currency. You cannot use the French franc or the Deutsche Mark or Japanese yen. You have to use dollars. When the world started trading only in dollars and the dollar became the world reserve currency, Nixon did away with the gold standard. We don't need to show you how many tons of gold we have to match it with the dollars. The French president at the time, Charles de Gaulle, complained, this is wrong. For the first time in history, you're separating money from something in return for what? Now the US can print dollars from thin air. Anytime the Federal Reserve wants another $1 trillion, they push a button, put it on the computer and say, this is another $1 trillion, and send it to the banks, and the banks now have it. And the banks go out and loan it to you. It's all digital money. They don't have to put another $1 trillion worth of gold somewhere in Fort Knox. Now it becomes a game. If you are the United States, you can print endless amount of money. But if you are a small country like Lebanon or Afghanistan, you cannot print your own money. You don't have anything in return. Your money is worthless. Nobody accepts it. And that currency domination in the world, we saw how in Venezuela, in so many countries, I don't want to keep naming names, we saw how their currencies completely were destroyed. Because eventually you'll have one currency, the dollar. Only now the Chinese have their own game. They figured this and they said, we're not going to participate. We're going to have our own money, our own World Bank, our own IMF. We're not going to be part of this game. And because of that, now the drums of war against China, every day, China, 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 China. What do you want with China? We want to go to war with China. Why? Because China doesn't want to play by our rules. A World War III is on the way because the US and the West demands that China has to submit to the same rules they control the world with. If a country, if Egypt says, we don't want to deal with dollars, we're going to deal with euros, they'll crash it tomorrow. When Turkey paid its debt to the IMF and the World Bank and said, we don't owe anybody anything, we will loan you money, they tried to crash its currency and crash the economy of Turkey. When Malaysia in the 90s was the tiger of Asia, producing computer chips and technologies, they went and bought a big amount of their currency and then George Soros dumped it in the market overnight and crashed their currency, driving so many businesses out of the market. This currency manipulation is not an accident. It's known where it's produced, how it is run in the network with the banks. From the individual level, they can freeze your account at Bank of America or Chase or SunTrust with just a button. Today you are a millionaire, tomorrow you are poor man, don't have a penny. You cannot access your money. That's how they can control it. You want to buy something, you have to use the banks. We don't accept payments in cash. You have to use our credit cards. You have to write check against your account. So if we freeze your account, then we ruin you. You have no money to buy food as an individual. You're a business, we'll control you with loans, interest loans, in order to make sure. 100 years ago, this country, everybody owned their home and their business. Today, 90% of Americans don't own their homes. They borrowed from the banks to live in those homes and to work and pay the banks multiple times. They never get done paying their homes. So you are renting in a different way. The actual owners of everybody are the big banks. So this is currency control. On the world stage, with the reserve currency, the dollar, when Saddam Hussein said, I want to use euros to buy and sell oil, they destroyed Iraq. They said, there are weapons of mass destruction. There was no weapons of mass destruction. But in their hands that they destroyed it. Because he made that mistake. When Gaddafi did the same thing, a revolution, and he was killed. I'm not defending Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi or any of these tyrants that they installed and financed. They worked for the CIA. But the economic policies have brought down entire nations to their knees, brought down hundreds of millions of people, human beings, to their knees. They can't function. They can't take care of their families, not because of the lack of food or resources, but because of this chaos, this fasad fil ard. ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها بقية الله خير لكم ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. He said, ولا تقعدوا بكل صراط توعدون وتصدون عن سبيل الله من آمن به وتبغونها عوجا. Don't sit in every path. Everyone who is trying to do something good, you push them out of the way. You want it crooked. تبغونها عوجا. That message to Midian is alive today. This economic chaos has heavy price, has very big taxing price on all human beings. Every day you wake up, you worry about how I'm going to pay my bills, how I'm going to help my family overseas, how I'm going to take care of this and that. You're running back and forth. Since when banks that were supposed to facilitate our lives become controlling our lives? Everything we do, we have to get approval. The third path that they took in order to bring more chaos is their trade policies. So, racism in trade, that's what it is. If you are Britain, you are our brothers and beloved. We'll work with you and we will not have problem. We'll trade with you. You're Pakistan, unless you follow what we tell you to do, we're not going to let you sell your products in our country, and we're going to charge you extra. We will not sell you planes. We'll not sell you cars, And will not let you even get the technology itself to do it. And if you figure it out, we'll go after you and make sure you don't. Countries like Egypt or Pakistan, they can produce their own cars and planes. If France can, if England can, with less population, I'm sure over 110 million Egyptians, over 200 million Pakistanis can. There are the scientists and the engineers who are doing it here. But if they try to do it in their own country, they're not allowed to. No transfer of technology allowed. Literally, scientists are assassinated. We have to keep those populations dependent on us in the West and poor. The corruption, the briberies, they rank Nigeria and Pakistan number 1 and 2 in the world in corruption. Why? Because it comes down to the human level, to the individual level. Fasadun fil ard. That's the only way. They tell you, if I don't do this, I can't work, I can't survive. The trade policies, right now, today they don't want China to come into the Asia-Pacific Pact for trade. The U.S. is not even there. It's on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. But it's a member. China, who is right there, cannot get into it unless they obey all the conditions. And when China, with 1.4 billion people, with its strong economy, you tell them no, they're going to create problems. That's going to lead to World War III. That's why America today signed with Australia and Britain to give Australia nuclear submarines. They have to face China. It's all over trade and trade routes, shipping routes from Asia to here. The economy, the money is all in the trade policies that they do. While we don't accept in this country that children work, we allow that to happen in Vietnam and Bangladesh and Nigeria and other places. The policies are geared towards us to benefit America, American businesses. Then we put tariffs, taxes on imports to make it, when other countries can produce something for much cheaper, the American people don't benefit from that. The government would put high taxes on it as tariffs, so the shirt that's made in Pakistan has to cost the same as the shirt made in America. It's not the Pakistani manufacturer who is benefiting from that. They may sell the shirt for $1, and then they have to pay $10 in taxes. So you buy it for $15. This tariff policy is not even with all countries. Again, if you are a Scandinavian country, if you are a white European country, it's different than if you are African country. If you are Asian country, those who actually need more, the money, the tariffs are on them. Through these trade policies, economic injustice is spread. Africa is kept very poor, and Europe and the West is kept very rich. It's not an accident. It is ifsadun fil ard. وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا. So, when we look at that, we see this is not accident. It is, again, part of a big plan, how to run the world in the 21st century, how to keep hundreds of millions of people poor and sick and in need, and keep the power in the hands of the few. My brothers and sisters, the message of Islam The universal message that Adam and Nuh and Ibrahim and Musa and Isa and Shu'aib, they all came to rescue humanity from its own mistakes and its own evil. 100 years ago, because of this, revolutions happened around the world. Communism came. The 20th century was a big mess with 2 world wars and many smaller wars. Do we want the 21st century to be the same? Because that's what we are heading to. Because when the few try to control the lives and the wealth of the many, that's what happens. 1% in this country has more wealth than the 99%. They are hyper billionaires. You know the names. Is that humanly possible? It's not possible unless there are policies that are impossible. It's not possible for each one of us to become. Everybody think, oh, I can become billionaire. No, you can't. They can become specific people. So, what do we learn from the story of Shu'aib alayhi salam? قال الملأ الذين استكبروا من قومه لنخرجنك يا شعيب والذين آمنوا معك من قريتنا أو لتعودن في ملتنا قال أولو كنا كارهين قد افترينا على الله كذبا إن عدنا في ملتكم بعد إذ نجانا الله منها وما يكون لنا أن نعود فيها إلا أن يشاء الله ربنا وسع ربنا كل شيء علما على الله توكلنا ربنا افتح بيننا وبين قومنا بالحق وأنت خير الفاتحين. الذين استكبروا, those who were arrogant because of their power and their financial power. When Shu'aib came to advise them as a prophet, a messenger from Allah, fix your ways, correct your injustices so that you have prosperous life. Allah is not against you living a good life, but He is against you being unjust to other people. They said either you get with the program or you get out of our town. He said, I cannot be part of your program. I cannot be corrupt like you. You know how many people, Muslims, the leader of Afghanistan that fled before the Taliban took over, before the Americans left, he left to Dubai with hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. And the Taliban found hundreds of millions of dollars cash in the palace. The second guy, the vice president, who ran to Banshir first and then to Tajikistan, this week they found $650 million cash in bags. Dollars, brand new, printed here. Those people not going, they want to be part of the program. That's why they become president and vice president, to have billions of dollars. Not to serve their people. Shu'aib said, no. My principles, no. I'm not going to be part of this corruption mechanism. وقال الذين كفروا لئن اتبعتم شعيبا إنكم إذا لخاسرون. They said, if you follow Shu'aib and his principles, you're all going to lose. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الذين كذبوا شعيبا كأن لم يغنوا فيها. الذين كذبوا شعيبا كانوا هم الخاسرين. Those who rejected Shu'aib and his message, they did not prosper. And they are the ones who became the losers. فتولى عنهم وقال يا قوم لقد أبلغت لكم رسالات ربي ونصحت لكم فكيف آسى على قوم كافرين. So I told you and I gave you advice. Why would I be sorry for what happened to you? The earthquake took them and destroyed them and killed them all. Today, when we ask ourselves, why do we have Hurricane Ida? Why do we have Hurricane Nicholas? Why do we have fires in the West, earthquakes in the Midwest. We have climate change. We have, because of what? Because of the fasad. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. This climate change that's going to claim hundreds of millions of people. You have 50 degrees centigrade weather in Canada. Not in the empty desert in Arabia, in Canada. In Europe. 120 degrees. Fires, entire towns are burned. Why? This is the imbalance created by the bad economic policies that creates what they call climate change. They want to fix climate change, they have to fix the economic policies. Or Allah will destroy them like He destroyed the people of Midian. That's the lesson for us. If we just don't care, or if we choose to participate as they ask us to and become corrupt, then the future that we give to our children will be a miserable one. We have to hold our leaders accountable, not just the political leaders, but the actual behind-the-scene leaders, the business leaders, the bankers, the big people who manipulate the leaders. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect humanity from what is coming to it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما أمر، والصلاة والسلام على خير البشر نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. In the next ayat in Surah Al-A'raf, after Allah tells us about Shu'aib, He gives us the answer, the solution. He says, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَى آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبُوا فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. If the people of the cities, the towns, the people who lead, the leading nations today, لو أنهم آمنوا واتقوا, if they believed in Allah and followed His rules, practiced taqwa, لفتحنا عليهم بركات من السماء والأرض. Allah said we would open the gates of blessings from the heavens and the earth for them. ولكن كذبوا, but they refused, they rejected this. فأخذناهم بما كانوا يكسبون. We took them by what they have earned. This nation, Europe, should know the reason there was World War I, because of such corruption. The reason they had World War II that destroyed that continent and killed over 100 million people, because of that corruption. What is going to bring the West down is their own corruption. But if they correct their path and bring justice, economic justice to the poor, why should a person work full day, work 30 days a month, and not be able to pay his rent and buy food or medicine for his family? In this country, when there are billionaires every day being made, because there are politicians who are getting bribed and lobbied not to allow minimum wage to rise to become living wage, so that you can work full time and then at least you can live. But so many people in this town are homeless because they can't afford the rent. So many people are going to be kicked out of their houses because they haven't been able to pay their rent. But they get kicked out, and those bankers will come and buy these houses and raise their prices and raise their rents. And you have to compete with everybody else. 50 years ago, there were 50 million Americans or 30 million Americans who were poor. Today, there are over 50 million Americans who are poor, under the poverty line. It's not right in the greatest nation on earth today, economically, militarily, to have so many human beings who cannot afford life, basic living. Forget the rest of the world, here. That's why people go to sell drugs. That's why people go to prostitute, because they need to live. They have to get money somehow. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to protect us from the future. He said the solution is iman and taqwa. وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَى آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. He said, أَفَأَمِنَ أَهْلُ الْقُرَىٰ أَن يَأْتِيَهُمْ بَأْسُنَا بَيَاتًا وَهُمْ نَائِمُونَ. Did the people of the cities watch out from the anger of Allah, that the punishment comes to them at night when they are asleep? أَوَأَمِنَ أَهْلُ الْقُرَىٰ أَن يَأْتِيَهُمْ بَأْسُنَا ضُحًى وَهُمْ يَلْعَبُونَ. Or to come to them in the morning when they are playing, when they are working. You know, the hurricane that went up to New York and drowned the city in New York and New Jersey. And over 60 people died. And so many people lost their homes. That's not an accident. That's Allah sending warning shots, messages. Wake up. Return to your senses before it's too late. Climate scientists, they tell us in a scientific way, we have to do this and that. But it's not that. Allah has put, وَلِلَّهِ جُنُودُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, His troops, the wind, the rain, the earthquakes, the heat, the sun, everything can be used against you. We are weak human beings. We need to have iman and taqwa. أَفَأَمِنُوا مَكْرَ اللَّهِ فَلَا يَأْمَنُ مَكْرَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Did they secure themselves against the plots of Allah? No one can escape the plots of Allah. No one can think they are secure except the disbelievers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. As Muslims, as believers, each one of us is somehow participating in this game. We all have a role to play and change. In your business, in your job, in your life, you have to reconsider and think. Don't use crooked ways to make wealth, because what comes in the crooked way is going to the hellfire. Rasulullah ﷺ said, مَا نَبَتَ مِنْ حَرَامٍ فَالنَّارُ أَوْلَى بِهِ. Whatever grows because of haram, well, the fire is more deserving of it. So limit yourself to the halal in your earning, in your dealing. Be fair, be good to your customers. Do your job correctly. Earn your salary or your money the halal way and spend it the right way. Help the poor and the needy, because that's what Allah expects you to spend your money the right way. Give zakat and sadaqat. Lift up other people so Allah will lift you up. And if you are in charge of some business or some corporation, then make sure the policies you carry out are fair to other businesses, to other customers and clients, to your ecosystem. Be the right example for humanity. You are a Muslim. This is who you are. You are for a short time on this earth. Do it right. Live as a Muslim, die as a Muslim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون.